The graduation day, Accusation, the June sun hung high in the sky, casting a golden glow across the Parker family's backyard. White tents stood neatly arranged over rows of tables decorated with blue and silver ribbons, the colors of Westbridge High School. Friends, relatives, neighbors, and teachers had gathered to celebrate Ethan Parker's graduation. For everyone else, it was a day of pride and joy. For Ethan, it was supposed to be the happiest day of his life. At 18 years old, Ethan had accomplished something no one thought possible. Despite growing up under the constant criticism of his father, Richard Parker, he had graduated at the top of his class and earned a full scholarship to a prestigious university. His teachers praised his determination, his classmates admired his kindness, even strangers who heard his story were inspired by his perseverance. Yet the one person whose approval he had chased his entire life remained impossible to please. Richard Parker stood near the grill, shaking hands with guests and accepting congratulations as if Ethan's achievements belonged to him. "Your son is remarkable," one neighbor said. Richard forced a smile. He did all right. Ethan heard the response and felt the familiar sting in his chest. Just all right. Years of sleepless nights, years of studying, years of sacrifice, and that was all his father had to say. His stepbrother Mason, only a year younger, leaned against a table scrolling through his phone. Unlike Ethan, Mason had never been expected to work hard. Richard praised him constantly despite his average grades and lack of ambition. Ethan had long ago accepted that reality. Or at least he thought he had. The celebration continued smoothly throughout the afternoon. Guests laughed, shared stories, and took pictures with Ethan in his graduation gown. For a few precious hours, he almost forgot how complicated his family was. Then everything changed. A loud voice suddenly cut through the crowd. "Where is it?" Conversation stopped. People turned. Richard stood near the patio, his face red with anger. Someone took it. He barked. The backyard fell silent. Ethan frowned and approached. "Dad, what's wrong?" Richard's eyes locked onto him immediately. "My father's watch is missing." A murmur spread among the guests. Everyone knew about the watch. The antique gold pocket watch had belonged to Ethan's grandfather. It was considered one of the family's most treasured possessions. Richard stepped closer. "Do you know anything about it?" The question caught Ethan off guard. "No." Richard's expression hardened. "Are you sure?" Ethan blinked. "Of course I'm sure." Several relatives exchanged uncomfortable glances. Richard folded his arms. "Interesting. What does that mean?" Ethan asked. "It means you were the last person near my office." The accusation hit Ethan like a punch. "What? I saw you walking past it this morning." "I walked past it because my room is upstairs." Richard ignored the explanation. "The watch was there this morning. Now it's gone." A knot formed in Ethan's stomach. "Dad, are you accusing me?" "I'm asking questions." "No." Ethan replied. "You're accusing me." The tension in the air became unbearable. Guests stared openly now. Some looked confused. Others looked suspicious. Richard suddenly pointed at him. "If you're innocent, empty your pockets." Ethan froze. The words echoed through the backyard. His face burned with humiliation. "Dad, do it." The command sounded more like a courtroom order than a father's request. Ethan looked around. His teachers were watching. His friends were watching. His neighbors were watching. Even children had stopped playing to see what was happening. "You can't be serious." Richard's voice grew louder. "Then prove you didn't take it." The accusation shattered something inside Ethan. After everything he had accomplished, after all his hard work, after spending years trying to earn his father's respect, Richard had chosen his graduation day to publicly brand him a thief. Slowly, Ethan emptied his pockets onto a nearby table. His phone, his wallet, his keys, nothing else. The watch wasn't there, but Richard didn't look relieved. Instead, he looked angry that he hadn't found evidence. The crowd remained silent. The damage had already been done. For the first time in his life, Ethan realized something painful. His father hadn't accused him because of evidence. His father had accused him because he wanted to believe the worst about him. As whispers spread among the guests, Ethan felt his graduation day slipping away. The celebration was over. The humiliation had begun, and deep down he sensed that this accusation was hiding a much darker secret than anyone could imagine. The days following Ethan's graduation felt like a nightmare he couldn't wake up from. What should have been the proudest week of his life became the most humiliating. News of Richard Parker's accusation spread quickly through the neighborhood. Some people believed Ethan was innocent, but others weren't so sure. After all, when a father publicly accuses his own son of theft, many assume he must have a reason. Ethan stayed mostly inside his small bedroom, avoiding calls and messages. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the same scene. His father pointing at him, guests staring, whispers filling the backyard, the look of disappointment on people's faces. The memory burned like a wound that refused to heal. 3 days after the party, Ethan packed a small bag and prepared to leave for college early. He couldn't bear staying in the same house any longer. As he carried his belongings downstairs, he heard voices coming from Richard's home office. The door wasn't fully closed. Normally, Ethan would have walked away, but something made him stop. "If that watch is found, everything changes," Richard whispered. Ethan froze. Another voice answered. It belonged to his stepmother, Linda. "You should have destroyed it years ago." Richard sighed heavily. "I couldn't. Then find it before someone else does." A chill ran down Ethan's spine. Destroyed it? Why would anyone want to destroy Grandpa's watch? Ethan quietly stepped away before they could notice him listening. For the rest of the day, those words replayed in his mind. Something wasn't right. The watch was clearly more important than anyone realized. That evening, Ethan decided he needed answers. The next morning, he drove across town to visit the one person who had been closest to his grandfather, an elderly family friend named Samuel Brooks. Samuel had known Ethan's grandfather for nearly 40 years. If anyone knew the truth, it would be him. When Ethan arrived, Samuel welcomed him warmly. "I heard what happened at your graduation," the old man said sadly. "I'm sorry, son." Ethan nodded. "I need to know something." Samuel motioned for him to sit. "What is it? Why was Grandpa's watch so important?" For several seconds, Samuel remained silent. His expression changed, almost as if he had been expecting the question. Finally, he stood and walked toward an old bookshelf. From behind several photo albums, he removed a worn leather journal. "This belonged to your grandfather." Ethan stared. "I've never seen that before. Most people haven't." Samuel carefully opened the journal. Inside were handwritten notes dating back years. Business records, personal thoughts, family history. Then Samuel stopped on a specific page. His finger pointed toward a paragraph. "Read this." Ethan leaned closer. His eyes widened. The entry described a custom engraving hidden inside the gold watch. Not on the outside, inside the back cover, a secret message only visible when the watch was carefully opened. "What does it say?" Ethan asked. Samuel looked at him seriously. "Your grandfather never told me the exact words." "Then why is it important?" "Because he said the engraving contained the truth." Ethan frowned. The truth about what? Samuel sighed. The Parker family. The room suddenly felt smaller. Years of confusion began connecting together in Ethan's mind. Richard's panic, the missing watch, the accusation. The conversation Ethan overheard. Everything pointed toward one conclusion. The watch wasn't valuable because of its gold. It was valuable because of the secret hidden inside it. Samuel reached into the journal and pulled out an old photograph. The picture showed Ethan's grandfather holding the watch. Written on the back were 6 words, "One day the truth will matter." Ethan stared at the message. His heart pounded. For the first time since graduation, he felt something stronger than pain, determination. Someone had hidden the watch. Someone was desperate to keep its secret buried, and whoever that person was had nearly destroyed Ethan's reputation to protect themselves. He slowly stood. "Thank you." Samuel smiled. "What are you going to do now?" Ethan looked at the photograph one last time. Then he slipped it carefully into his pocket. "I'm going to find that watch." As he walked toward the door, he realized his graduation day humiliation might have been only the beginning. Somewhere, hidden behind a missing gold watch and a secret engraving, lay a truth powerful enough to terrify Richard Parker. And Ethan intended to uncover every piece of it. For nearly 3 weeks, Ethan searched for answers. While preparing for college, he spent every spare moment investigating the mystery surrounding his grandfather's missing watch. The more he learned, the more convinced he became that his father had never truly cared about finding the watch. Richard only cared about keeping its secret hidden. Late one evening, Ethan received an unexpected phone call. The number belonged to Mason. His stepbrother rarely called him. "Ethan," Mason said nervously, "we need to talk." Ethan immediately sensed something was wrong. "What happened?" There was a long silence. Then Mason spoke words Ethan never expected to hear. "I think I know where Grandpa's watch is." Ethan's heart nearly stopped. "What? I didn't steal it," Mason quickly said, "but I found it a few days before your graduation." Ethan gripped the phone tighter. "Then why didn't you say anything?" "Because Dad told me not to." The answer sent a wave of anger through Ethan. Mason continued. "He said the watch wasn't important and that he'd handle everything. But instead he accused me. I know." For the first time, Mason sounded genuinely ashamed. The next morning, the two met at a small coffee shop. Mason looked exhausted. Dark circles sat beneath his eyes. "I found it in a storage box in the attic," he explained. "It accidentally fell behind some old furniture. Dad took it after I showed him." Ethan frowned. "If he had the watch before graduation, then he knew I didn't steal it." Mason lowered his head. "Yeah." The truth hurt more than Ethan expected. His father hadn't made a mistake. He had knowingly humiliated him. Mason reached into his backpack and pulled out a small wooden box. Ethan instantly recognized it. Inside lay the missing gold watch. For several seconds, neither brother spoke. The watch seemed ordinary, just an old family heirloom. Yet somehow it had nearly destroyed Ethan's life. With trembling hands, Ethan carefully opened the back cover. A tiny hidden panel appeared, and beneath it was the engraving. The message was short, but its impact was devastating. It revealed that Ethan's grandfather had legally designated Ethan's late mother and her future children as primary heirs to a significant portion of the family estate. If anything happened to them, ownership would pass directly to Ethan. Not Richard, not Mason, Ethan. Attached to the engraving was a reference to legal documents stored with the family's longtime attorney. Richard had known about it all along. That was why he had panicked. That was why he wanted the watch hidden. That was why he accused Ethan. The realization made Ethan sick. His father had sacrificed his son's reputation to protect his own interests. 2 days later, an annual Parker family gathering took place in the same backyard where Ethan had been publicly accused. Dozens of relatives attended. Neighbors came as well. Many were curious after hearing rumors about the graduation incident. Richard stood confidently among the guests, acting as though nothing had happened. Then the backyard gate opened. Conversation stopped. Ethan walked inside. Mason followed behind him. Several guests exchanged surprised looks. Richard's smile vanished instantly. "What are you doing here?" he asked. Ethan didn't answer. Instead, he walked directly to the center of the yard, the exact spot where he had emptied his pockets weeks earlier, the exact spot where his father had called him a thief. Everyone watched, confused, curious, waiting. Ethan slowly raised the gold watch. Gasps spread through the crowd. Richard's face turned pale. "You found it," someone whispered. Ethan nodded. "Yes." Richard immediately stepped forward. "Give that to me." "No." The single word echoed across the silent backyard. For the first time in his life, Ethan wasn't afraid of his father. He opened the watch, then he revealed the hidden engraving to everyone. Guests crowded closer. Relatives read the message aloud. Expressions changed from confusion to shock. Then Ethan presented copies of the legal documents referenced inside the watch. The evidence was undeniable. Years of deception were suddenly exposed. Richard stood frozen. His carefully built image was crumbling in front of everyone. Then Mason stepped forward. His voice shook. Dad knew Ethan was innocent. The crowd erupted into stunned murmurs. Mason swallowed hard. He had the watch before graduation. The backyard fell completely silent. Every eye turned toward Richard Parker, the man who had publicly branded his own son a thief, and at that moment everyone finally understood who the real liar had been all along. The silence that followed Mason's confession felt endless. No one moved, no one spoke. The backyard that had once echoed with laughter now felt like a courtroom where a final verdict had just been delivered. Every guest stared at Richard Parker. The respected businessman, who had spent years building a reputation for honesty and integrity, now stood exposed before family, friends, and neighbors. For the first time in Ethan's life, his father had nowhere to hide. Richard's face had lost all color. His hands trembled at his sides. Several relatives looked at him with disbelief. Others looked furious. An elderly aunt finally broke the silence. "You accused your own son knowing he was innocent." Richard opened his mouth, but no words came out. Another relative stepped forward. On his graduation day, the disappointment in their voices was impossible to ignore. Ethan watched quietly. Weeks earlier, he had imagined this moment countless times. He had dreamed about exposing his father, about making him feel the same humiliation he had suffered. But standing there now, he felt something unexpected. Not satisfaction, not anger, just sadness. The man he had spent his entire life trying to impress had chosen money and control over his own son. That realization hurt more than the accusation ever had. Richard finally spoke. "It wasn't supposed to happen like this." Murmurs spread through the crowd. Ethan shook his head. "How was it supposed to happen?" Richard looked away. "I was trying to protect the family." "The family?" Ethan replied. "You publicly called me a thief." Richard couldn't meet his eyes because there was no defense, no excuse, no explanation that could justify what he had done. Mason stepped beside Ethan. For years, the brothers had been divided by favoritism and manipulation. Now they stood together. "Dad," Mason said quietly, "you hurt all of us." Richard looked stunned. Even his favorite son had turned away from him. One by one, guests began expressing their disappointment. Neighbors who had admired Richard's success questioned his character. Relatives who had trusted him felt betrayed. The truth spread through the gathering faster than any rumor ever could. For weeks, Ethan had carried the weight of public humiliation. Now that weight had shifted. Richard finally understood what it felt like to stand alone. Tears appeared in Linda's eyes. She looked around at the crowd and realized the family image she had spent years protecting was gone. The secret was no longer hidden. The truth was out, and everyone knew it. Richard slowly walked toward Ethan. His voice was barely above a whisper. "I'm sorry." The words sounded strange coming from him, as if he wasn't used to saying them. Ethan studied his father's face. For years he had waited to hear an apology. Now that it had finally come, it felt far too late. "I'm sure you are," Ethan replied. Richard's eyes filled with regret. "Can you forgive me?" The question hung in the air. Everyone waited for Ethan's answer. Some expected him to lash out. Others expected revenge. After everything Richard had done, nobody would have blamed him. But Ethan surprised them all. He took a deep breath, then he nodded slowly. "I forgive you." A wave of shock passed through the crowd. Richard looked stunned. Ethan continued, "I forgive you because I don't want to carry this anger for the rest of my life." Hope appeared in Richard's eyes. Then Ethan finished speaking. "But forgiveness doesn't mean trust." The hope vanished. "You accused me in front of everyone. You chose your reputation over your son. You broke something that can't be repaired overnight." Richard lowered his head because he knew Ethan was right. Some wounds take years to heal. Others never fully heal at all. Months later, Ethan left for college. The legal documents hidden inside the watch ensured that his grandfather's wishes would finally be honored. Part of the family estate was transferred according to the original inheritance plan, but the greatest victory wasn't financial. It was personal. Ethan no longer needed his father's approval. For the first time in his life, he understood his own worth. As years passed, he built a successful career, surrounded himself with people who respected him, and created a future defined by honesty rather than bitterness. Sometimes he thought about that graduation day, the day his father branded him a thief, the day his world seemed to collapse. Ironically, it had become the beginning of everything, because the same backyard that witnessed his humiliation had also witnessed the truth. And in the end, Ethan's sweetest revenge wasn't exposing Richard Parker. It was proving that no false accusation, no betrayal, and no act of cruelty could stop him from becoming the man he was meant to be. While Richard spent years living with regret, Ethan moved forward with freedom, and that was a victory far greater than revenge could ever provide.